think things are really changing to where people aren't really aware of like uh, d- different conspiracies, okay, and conspiracy theories. They're not really aware of what they really are, in my opinion. I think that things are getting a little bit too descriptive in the world. Um, it's pretty messed up, to be honest with you. I read that and I'm like, I can't believe that somebody would honestly say that, you know what I mean? And then, like, saying that people who believe in conspiracy theories are, uneducated. I mean, I can name three people who freaking are ancient aliens who are freaking rocket scientists, or one that's a rocket scientist, but three of them that are educated and have professional lives. You know, that's just completely absurd. But that's what my take on the deal is. But if you guys want to, man, I'll let it go at that. See what you guys want to do talk about. Let me get back on here and see what.
Okay, so listen, I had read something not long ago, and please correct me if I'm incorrect, definitely. But I had read something, and it was talking about the government having locked, sealed. I get excited about conspiracy, concealed documents in which they basically have like some classified file that you're not even allowed to comment on conspiracy theory. But the craziest part about it is, it's everything that we seem to be or say to be conspiracies. So it's like all this stuff locked in a vault. I don't know if it really is in a vault, but you get it. And it's like everything that we that are called conspiracies, but they're not. And they define them as hidden truths. And it's crazy because if they're defining conspiracy as hidden truths, it means it's not a conspiracy, a truth, but we're just hiding it from you. And it's known. I mean, I'm sure we know the government knows, but most people know that the government knows exactly what it's doing. It's like they're not conspiracy. And so the definition, I mean, but it's literally not it's not made up. They're not stories. That's just something I really would like to emphasize. Conspiracies are not made up. They're normally backed by facts that you have to kind of dig up, research that you have that's really hidden and hidden truths in order for you to actually find. And I wanted to know, did you ever hear any of that? Like, because like
Oh
yesterday, like
yeah,
that
you
IRS
you hear that
government
all you
document
hear
that
that
I
all the time.
about
You hear that all the time. I
the
mean,
aliens, right? Yeah.
well, Picos, Dave, you got your hand raised.
He
If
hasn't
you want,
seen that.
you want to say something, Picos?
As people brought up aliens. I actually have a little more background on that than most people. I'm not some kind of alien nut or anything, but my father was born in Artesia, New Mexico, and his grandfather actually worked on the pumps for the guy who had the crash, on his farm near Roswell. And my great grandfather talked to the guy about that stuff extensively. And I spent 8 years at NASA. And while I was there were three people that I talked to on a regular basis that had been there for 40 years. And they were quite talkative about the old ways around there. Officially, NASA had no stance on them existing, whatever. But all the old timers that were there during the Gemini program, they talked about it openly. There was the talk of the town when that UFO was trailing, I don't even, was it Apollo 10? And I was doing some work in there, and I've heard people talk about
Well,
things that
excuse me.
probably
I
should. What's up?
apologize. Can you elaborate? You said it was trailing Apollo 10. What's that about? I never heard of this before.
Oh,
There was a UFO?
that's actually fairly well documented. That's one of the ones that was talked about. I think it was Apollo 10. It might have been a different Apollo mission, but
That doesn't even matter, that part. I'm more so concerned with the fact that this is news that I can like Google or something.
yeah, look up the quote, "We have a Santa Claus."
Oh wow.
If you if you
Okay,
look
right.
up,
I'm about to do it right now. I gotta do one thing and I'm about to
because
do it.
it was on Christmas Eve, and they asked for the location of what was the second phase. I forgot the names of each of the propulsion phases on the Apollo rockets, but they asked where their second phase was because they noticed they were being followed. And they told them it was way the hell off. I mean, so far they wouldn't have been able to see it. And they said, Houston, we have a Santa Claus. And that's when the radios they were using back then, there was a more public channel, and then they kind of had a scrambled back channel. And as soon as they said we have a Santa Claus, that was the cue for them to switch to the stop doing public audio with Capcom and switch to the encrypted data. And that's when they described what they were being followed by. But yeah, you talk to the old timers that were there over 40 years ago, you hear all kinds of stories. I guess closer to 50 years ago now, because it's been more than 10 years since. It's been nearly 10 years since I worked there, so it's been a while since even I heard these stories. I say 40 because they were been there 40 years when I got hired. That's been a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, you talk to the old timers around there. They talked about the encounters very openly in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. Somewhere around the early 80s is when they clamped down on all the talk and started taking their official position that they don't exist. But now they airbrush things out. I know for a fact there are smaller craft that hang around the ISS and just keep an eye on it. I don't have many details about anything. I just know there's been extensive encounters. And
that goes back to what I was just saying about the whole thing about trying to differentiate between a conspiracy and a conspiracy theory, okay? Now, I want to elaborate on the fact you're talking about educated men. You're talking about men of science who had been around the field for quite a few years, and they're just openly talking about aliens, you know what I mean? There's a group of people that are out there trying their best to make it out like people who believe in conspiracy theories are uneducated people who know nothing about science and blah, blah, blah. It's written all over the place, you know what I mean? And I just think that that's a shame, because I don't believe in every conspiracy
as well as liars.
theory. You know what I mean? I don't fall for every conspiracy theory, but there are good ones. There really are.
Which ones do you not agree with? Which one do you not agree with?
I just wanted to make that point and let Picos talk, because he's saying some good stuff. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to add that in there. You know?
You'll answer it later, okay? I understand.
You're doing a really good example of what I'm talking about right there. That's amazing. And
but what they do with conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I'm looking up Santa Claus now.
The word conspiracy theory itself was, I think, a CIA or FBI operation to get people to quit looking at the UFOs.
Yeah.
They just made them sound crazy, and if you label someone as crazy, no one pays attention to them.
Yeah.
Eventually, that quit working. Honestly, the whole COVID fiasco was one of the best things that ever happened to get people to look at misinformation and figure out what real misinformation is versus propaganda.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the best way they found the word conspiracy theorist doesn't really work anymore. And the new way they've come about getting people to quit looking at things is telling everyone it's real, then adding a whole lot of information that isn't. Yeah. So, I can't tell you a lot about UFOs beyond the fact I know absolutely they exist. There's no doubt. We've documented them. We have pieces of them. We have recovered bodies. And beyond that, I really don't know. The problem is
what kind of aliens?
Right. Every time some kind of real information comes out, they release 12 more stories to go along with it. And by the time you assimilate all the data that's publicly available, mostly from tinfoil hat sites, you never know what's real or not.
Now, do you think
Chances
that's
are, if you look at everything, you found the truth somewhere, and you found 12 layers of bullshit around it.
yeah? My question is honestly, like those tinfoil outfits. Do you think that's on purpose? Like those are actually orchestrated?
There is,
Yes.
there are intentional disinformation personalities. I think I've identified one on mine, but I'm not 100% sure. Kind of like the Q phenomenon. Q was real at first. The first 2 weeks or so that Q was around, that was real. But the keys got taken over, and it became a disinformation campaign.
QAnon, AN. Yeah.
What I found is, other than fake personalities tend to not work too well because they tend to get outed, what you have is you get tainted sources. You have people making intentional misinformation, and they feed that misinformation to trusted tinfoil hat individuals. And the very best reporters verify before they release anything, but you occasionally get the ones that just kind of say, yeah, that looks good, and they publish it. And you've got to really pay attention to which sources you're going to pay attention to, which ones you need to listen to.
Or
Yeah.
they're strategically distributing it, like paying people to be tinfoil hats. Not really like those people are really tinfoil hats, but more like paid actors and actresses in order for us to be illusioned. Because in most cases, especially people like you were saying, a notoriety in which they are giving them tinfoil information, they're not really giving for information, saying, hey, we have some serious information and then we would like it to be hidden. And that makes, yeah. And I mean, the people, and there'll be a reason, they'll have to have some type of reason to participate or some type of incentive to participate, which would increase what, yep, definitely. Well, yeah, it makes sense why, yeah, why it'd be the same people always.
Now,
No,
see,
I just, now going on to my own
another good
conspiracy, but it might
example.
not be.
Another good example of this is like you know how like the popular thing is to bring up Roswell, okay? And the truth of the matter is there have been UFO sightings that go back even farther than Roswell. Like I live here in Southern Illinois, and one of the major first UFO sightings just happened maybe I don't know about freaking 100 less than 100 miles away from me in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. You know, that was one of the first recorded UFO sightings that was like on the scale of Roswell, but it never made the media and it was
And
quieted up.
there was a 19th century one here in Texas
Yeah.
that was covered rather extensively at the time in the newspapers. And apparently they threw the pieces of the craft down the well,
Mm.
gave the aliens a Christian burial, and the people who threw the pieces of the craft down the well pretty much all died of cancer or some kind of radiation poisoning. But it was pretty well documented in the 19th century. And sometime during the 1980s, there was a pretty big one that went down over the Soviet Union, cleared a big path of the forest. But that's the kind of stuff they don't talk about much. And that's the kind of stuff that right, I have levels of solidity when I address issues like this. I've got the level I told you that I know about for sure. Then everything else after that's a different layer of probably, maybe not, could be bullshit. It's just I work in layers on that, and my solid layer is very thin.
Yeah. I know. I feel the same way, and I was talking about that the other day with the topic, and I was like, it's about discernment. You have to use your own common sense and discern the truth from the false. If you don't know how to do that, then you're just going to go down an avenue that's going to mess you up. I mean, there's a lot of people on this topic that aren't really trying to come out with this stuff for your best interest,